first thing I need to say is the meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the council's YouTube channel. So you're invited to attend the meeting, and I note the business to be considered as attached, but the meeting isn't being webcast, but it will be available for download after the event. So just be aware that you're agreeing to that by taking part, by attending this meeting. You're consenting to being recorded. Okay. The first item on the agenda, Fiona, is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Pauline Munro. And would you like me to go on to doing the declarations of interest?
I think item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. So if you can.
Well, I have a declaration from yourself for item 4 as a director of Tain Heritage Trust, and I know you're intending to leave the meeting for that item, and Councillor Nolan will take the chair for the item 4. And also for item 4, I have a declaration from Councillor Collier in regard to the application for Invergordon Museum due to a family connection, and she is going to leave the meeting for the discussion of application only. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right, so item 3 on the agenda is the report from the fire area performance summary report. And today we have Miles Stubbs with us to introduce the report. On you go, Miles.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'm not sure if I can still say Happy New Year to everybody. I'm not sure when you actually stop saying that, but I'll say it anyway. Happy New Year to all, and I will now go into the detail of the Easter Ross Area Committee report on behalf of the local senior officer for Highland, Michael Humphreys. The report, as you'll know, has been circulated and will have been passed on to you all by Fiona a couple of weeks ago. So rather than go through the whole report in sort of explicit detail, I'll go through the covering report letter that I submitted alongside the report. To summarise, the report provides an update to all members against the priorities outlined in the service plan for Easter Ross. Priority areas are identified through a range of intervention, primarily, and then prevention and protection activities. The report contains previously agreed information and performance as requested by the committee in the past. And obviously it's available there for you to comment and scrutinise in the attached report, which you'll have obviously had. So the attached report provides the current figures for Q3 of 22 into 23, alongside previous data from the 4 reporting years prior to that. We look at sort of key indicators and timelines from that report, and we sort of report on those key aspects. If we move on slightly, a number of prevention and protection activities are progressing on the back of COVID, which unfortunately we're sort of still repairing ourselves from. These include the delivery of home fire safety visits, which are really being able to be ramped up now that we obviously are able to get back into people's homes, which is great. We're targeting high-risk groups primarily, and generating good prevention and protection at stats throughout the area. This is through operational staff, on-call staff, and the community safety advocates that we have dispersed throughout the area. We also do targeted home fire safety visit as a part of what we call post-domestic incident reports. So if we are attending an incident, one of our key post-incident actions is to give advice not only to the the dwelling and the property involved, but also to neighbouring properties, which will also have seen the incident and will obviously be shocked and aware of that incident. It's all aimed at reducing accidental dwelling fires, and what we try and do is actively promote the reduction of fire-related incidents through that mechanism. We're also working with our partners throughout the areas, particularly high schools. Just now, we're working promoting the reduction of fire-related antisocial behaviour, particularly at two of our larger high schools there. Targeting youth engagement. Thankfully, we're now able to get back to working face-to-face instead of just using digital platforms. So we're actually back in schools and working with the younger people to sort of educate them on the pitfalls of being involved in that type of activity. We continue to apply dedicated focus on what we call UFAS incidents. That's unwanted fire alarm signals. This is through engagement with a number of premises that we've had a couple of issues with, but our centralised prevention and protection department are working closely with these premises. A lot of these unwanted signals can be down to faults within systems or sometimes a fault within the process. If the building contains a process, for example, machinery or processing. So we're working very closely with those property holders to try and reduce those unwanted signals, because obviously it pulls our operational resource away to an unwanted signal and can obviously delay a response for a true incident. We're working closely. It's actually very sort of ties in with the last one with unwanted fire alarms. We're gathering operational intelligence at quite a good rate just now. There's a number of what we call higher risk premises within Easter Ross. I'm sure you're aware of them. Again, primarily in manufacturing, processing and so on. So gathering information on these properties and the hazards and risks that they pose is essential. So there's a lot of proactive work going on in that sector as well. Moving on, it must be emphasised that the baseline figures that you'll see in the report are actually quite low, so it can make meaningful stats quite challenging, but obviously that is a good thing. The performance report shows that accidental dwelling fires remain very low in the area, which is again very good to hear. There's been 3 accidental dwelling fires in this reporting period, which have increased slightly over the previous quarter. However, it remains consistent with the low fire year trend. And primarily fire fatalities and casualties remain at 0, so that's extremely important and good to report. Deliberate fires are much lower than the previous quarter, I'm glad to report, with the majority involving incidents in an outdoor setting. These tie in with the antisocial behaviour aspects, which we're targeting and working with just now. Unfortunately, there is a sort of a bit of a connection there with youth, that sort of age category, but again we are targeting that very closely through high schools and in connection and partnership with Police Scotland. I mentioned UFAS incidents. Unwanted fire alarm systems are lower than the previous quarter, and we're working continuously with that to try and pull that down. In relation to special services, road traffic collisions in particular, again they remain low. We had 3 incidents this quarter with minimal fire service involvement. Again, this is down on the quarter before. And lastly, the station availability remains very strong for all first appliances within the area. We're proactively recruiting just now to increase the establishment in Invergordon, but on a whole, first appliance availability is very strong. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks. Thanks very much for the report, Miles. It's as always very detailed and informative. I had one or two things I'd kind of picked up on myself. Deliberate fires. They thankfully seem to have reduced a bit. So Q3 is a significant improvement on Q1. In terms of special services, the road traffic collisions, the performance over the last 3 years seems to be much better than the performance prior to that. So the number of accidents does seem to have fallen. So again, I think that's something positive that we can welcome. And the third one was the false alarms that you were referring to yourself in your report. And that looks like it has been on a bit of an upward trend. And I wondered whether there was any particular reason for that, or whether it was just the time of year and now it seems to be stabilizing. I don't know. If you had any comments on that.
It is actually starting to stabilise now, and that's on the back of some pretty targeted engagement with some of the premises involved. We always have an aspect of unwanted sort of alarm signals via the antisocial aspect, again sort of linked through high schools and so on, but that has been we've really done some targeted work this year, which actually has been quite fruitful. I think it's led to other more engagement with some of the development services with some of the schools. So we're working with sort of younger people and we're trying to educate them and make them see that, you know, okay, if you do this, you're pulling vital resources away from your community and you're putting them somewhere else that they actually don't need to be. So it could affect your own family, your own friends. And so I think COVID, and again, I apologize for saying that word, because we blame a lot of things for it, but you know, that face-to-face engagement has been missing, and for a couple of years in the school setting, that's really important. So it's great to get back in there face-to-face. It's led to some education kind of windows in other aspects, like developing the local workforce, making some of the youngsters that are around about 18, 19 see that they could actually become a firefighter themselves and actually join their local unit. So it's led to a few things, but yeah, so schools is obviously one aspect, but there are having a couple of I won't mention them obviously just to protect confidentiality of the premises, but repeat offenders, but that targeted aspect through our prevention and protection department is looking like that's starting to mitigate that. So yeah.
Okay, that's reassuring. I've got a couple of hands up. Other members want to ask you questions. So, Councillor Alistair Rind, if you want to go first.
Thank you. If I heard you correctly, Miles, is it Miles?
That's right. Yes.
Correctly, Miles, you spoke about derelict buildings and fires that happened there. And we had one such in Tain not that long ago on the High Street. And I was just wondering, are you liaising, can you liaise with the owners of that building? It's been an eyesore in Tain High Street now for probably 10 years or plus that. And it's a great shame. But, a lot of, we presume, young teenagers are going down to that building, and this is causing endless problems. So I don't know, can you liaise with the owners of that property to see what can be done about it? Thank you.
So in answer to your question, Councillor, it's actually quite coincidental, but I actually attended that incident in the capacity of first call officer. So your local Tain crew, obviously they're turned out and respond initially, and then I came on later in the incident as the first call officer. So I actually was at that incident.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful for that, the positive response there.
Yep.
So there's a divergence of opinion between the fire service and building control. Because building control say that property is quite safe. So I think if Helen's hearing, I think we need to get a meeting set up with building control and maybe the fire service just to see how we're going to take that forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Alistair. And Helen, if you could note that, I guess it does sound like quite a serious difference of opinion.
Yeah, Fiona, I know we'll catch that on the action tracker, and I'll pick it up from there. No problem.
Just to give you a sort of a bit of context, that from a firefighting point of view, we did what's called defensive firefighting. So although it was when we attended, it was a very sort of small fire. It was basically extinguished from the external area, that, you know, rather than committing personnel within, because obviously it's, you know, it poses a significant risk of collapse. So so thanks for that.
Thanks, Miles, for clarification. And Councillor Collier, Tamala, over to you.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, thank you so much for the report, Miles. I'm just wanting to ask, so say if we have false alarms in buildings, in particular buildings, all over and over again, is there any charge involving this, like for attending for false alarms after investigations? It was asked by constituents, so I thought I'll better check with you.
I think, I mean, for repeat unwanted signals, there are various stages. I'm not actually in prevention and protection myself, although that's something I was going to come into a little later on. I will be moving into that directorate next month. So it is sort of categorised in the, you know, the number of attendances that you attend. It's almost like it's a traffic light system, but hopefully we don't get anywhere near that sort of penalty kind of area with sort of good engagement with our protection and prevention department. They have a whole abundance of resources where they can help direct to specialists. We have fire engineering teams that won't actually physically get involved with installations, but they can advise on perhaps moving a detector head that's over a piece of machinery that is constantly activating it and stuff like that. So but there's an abundance of advice and specialists that are available through the service, and at the end of the day, we never want to say, well, we're not going to attend, because, you know, that could be that one time where something is genuinely happening. So that's not our way. But we really do need to work to mitigate those unwanted signals, because you know, for example, if it was outside Invergordon and your two Invergordon appliances are consistently on a wild goose chase to something that is that's not a real incident, it then poses you know, risk to the rest of the community. So yeah, but that's something that again, I can speak to you again off table if you want some more information on that.
That'll be great. Thank you so much, Miles. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Miles? Okay then, Miles, thanks very much for coming along today and attending. Thanks for your report, and thanks for the interaction with members and the clarifications and answers you provided them with. And you're free to remain if you want, but you're free to go if you have other tasks you need to get on with.
Yeah, well, I do actually, so I'll sort of graciously remove myself from it. So thank you very much for your time. It was just to give you a slight bit of an update. From the 1st of February, you will actually have a new fire officer that will be starting in the Gordon District Office, Sam Friach. But I will introduce him in due course, and I will be moving into prevention and protection from the 1st of February. So I'll probably still cross paths with a lot of you, but in different remits. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thanks very much.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
All
Cheers,
the best in your new role, Miles.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. So that was item 3. Item 4 on the agenda is the community regeneration funding. Now, that's the item that I have to absent myself from because one of the charities I'm involved with has one of the bids in. So I'm going to ask Molly Nolan if she would take the role of chair for this item, and I'll ask the officers to get in touch with me once this item has concluded. Thanks very much, and I'll leave the meeting at this point.
Thanks, Derek. We'll get you back in soon, I hope. Great. So we move on to item 4. This is community regeneration funding application approvals. Everyone should have had circulated the information on the applications and also a spreadsheet detailing of how well they fit the criteria. So we are asked to consider all the applications for funding and either approve them, defer them, or reject them. The approvals can also include conditions if we would like to attach those to any. And another point I'd like to make note of is that the total amount of money requested across all of these applications is less than the amount of money available. So if we are minded to, we can approve all projects. So if we take the items one by one from the spreadsheet that was circulated, if everyone's happy with that, the first application would be Tain Heritage Trust. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make? Councillor Rind?
Yeah, content to approve.
Yep.
Okay.
Are we all content to approve Tain Heritage Trust?
Yeah.
Great. The second application is Tain Youth Cafe. Are we content to approve?
Content to approve.
Yes, I am too.
Thank you. The third application is Eventon Social and Events Group Winter Lunches for over 60s. Are we content?
Yep.
Agreed.
We then go to Ross Sutherland Rugby Club, improving external club areas. Are we content? Yep. Application 1031, Befrienders Highland, extending face-to-face mental health befriending. Just to note, this application has a few questions around it about how the service will continue post COVID recovery funds expiring. So I will take comments from other members, but we might want to consider that in how we take it forward. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, are we content to approve that in that case? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I'm on mute.
Okay, we then get to Milton Community Woodland, who have submitted 2 projects. The first one is solar panels upgrade. And again, just to make you aware, there are concerns from officers over costs because no quotes have been obtained, only verbal discussions. So can I suggest that we either approve this project with conditions of satisfactory quotes or defer it until the applicant has time to do that?
I think we should defer this project until we have the full details of it.
Yes, I agree with that too. Yeah.
And can I suggest the same for the other Milton Community Woodland project, path maintenance, where there is it's not clear how many meters of path will be covered, and there is only 1 quote available. So we'll defer that as well.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark
Thank
got his
you.
hand up, sorry.
Sorry, Mark.
Thank you. Sorry, it's
Apologies.
just a
I'm
quick point.
going between screens here.
No, it's easy done. You can't always see the hands when you're chairing either, so I appreciate that. I think my advice to members is that where there is no evidence of costing or extent of what is being asked for, that it is appropriate to defer. My advice would be you do not approve anything with conditions. You defer pending any deficiency in information being properly provided to you, would be my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And my apologies, as we get into some of the applications which are perhaps slightly less, have less information attached to them. Officers, is there anything you'd like to add as we discuss these?
Hello. Yeah, I'll just take questions as and when they arise. So yeah, happy just to pitch in when needed. So thank you.
Thank you. So we go then to applicant CCAST, Mansfield Estate Support Programme. This is to employ a part-time hub worker for the estate 3 times a week for 14 months and supporting the Highland Council tenant participation officers. Again, this project has changed focus since members gave feedback, and I think there are some questions around how they will work with the tenant participation officer. So officers, do you have any comments on that? We have not had anything through from them, I presume.
No, so this is based on yeah, the information provided in the application, and I think maybe what's happened is that when the EOI came in, they were advised to come back with a full application to focus on the Mansfield area, so perhaps they may have not had time to get some evidence together. So yeah, they do say they will support the tenancy participation officers, but to evidence engagement and support, you know, we would have expected to see a letter of support from the tenancy participation officer. So that could be a condition that they do get that letter to show that they also support the project that they wish to propose for that area.
I think that sounds like a good solution to me. Does anyone have any objections to that?
I have no objections to that, but let's be rest assured the cast operation are doing great work, not only in Mansfield Estate, but right through the ward. And again, let's be rest assured that they are doing that, doing so much work that the council should actually be doing. They get no payment whatsoever from the council. The council refer people to them, and they get no payment for that whatsoever. There's another organisation, I can't remember their name, but they get paid for doing this work for housing. But CAST, when the council often refer people to CAST, and CAST get no payment for that whatsoever. So I think we've got to recognise that CAST are doing a good job helping people which have so many financial difficulties within their lives and other social problems, and CAST are there on the doorstep helping, matched to well, as I say, with no support from the Highland Council. So I think this here today would give them a wee bit of encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other comments from other councillors? So can I propose that we approve this project subject to a letter of approval from the Highland Council tenant participation officers?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. We'll move on to Change Mental Health, which was previously Support in Mind Scotland. This is to do Easter Ross outreach, recruiting an additional part-time outreach worker for 12 months to support 12 additional people who have complex mental health needs based in Allness. So there are some concerns from officers here about how this project would work with the Highland Council and the NHS. And there is also a question mark over how match funding will be completed. Officers, do you have any additional information you want to provide on this one?
Yeah, in terms of the match funding, the way we score against the criteria is that you know, the green is where they will have match funding in place because they made an effort to get match funding. Amber would be where they've applied for match funding, but they're just pending decision. And a red is where they don't have match funding. It's, you know, it's not a reflection on the applicant because they could apply up to 100%. However, we felt with the scoring, it was just a bit unfair to give them a higher score against those projects that do have match funding in place. So that's why there's a red against the match funding there. So that there are no concerns. It's just, like I said, it just wasn't fair to give them a higher score where other projects do have match funding in place. And then in terms of the application, when the EOI came in, members did have queries in terms of they wanted to have a better understanding what this group and organisation have achieved in the Highlands in the past. So, and that information wasn't provided. So as you can see, it has scored quite a few ambers. Again, it is technically eligible. It's just perhaps that it was just lacking in detail in the applications, what they have done in the past, how they will work with existing groups and organisations, especially, you know, the NHS and the Highland Council Social Services Department. So again, it was just lacking detail how they will work in partnership with other groups and organisations. And again, if members wish to attach conditions around that, then yes, we could do that. That they, again, similar to the previous project, a letter of support, for example, could help meet that requirement.
Can I ask, maybe particularly Tamla, but any other councillors, are you familiar with this organisation in the area?
No, I haven't, and I requested further information at the EOI stage, and we haven't heard anything back from them at all. So I maybe agree to it with conditions attached to it. Waiting for more information. Thanks.
Paula, could you advise if it would be better to approve with the condition that we need further information, or to defer to give them time to give that information?
Well, it's up to members if they like the, you know, what they are, are hoping to achieve and what they're trying to support, but with a bit more information that we could circulate, so it could be approved with conditions, just to give you a bit more information. But just behind that, you are just happy with what they're doing, because again, technically it is eligible. It's just lacking in detail. So yeah, you could approve based on conditions, and if members wish to do that, then we could circulate whatever update the group gives us just for that information.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, I think this one should come back to us once more information has been received. I don't think we should give any guidance on it today. let's receive more information and then let's take it forward if we feel necessary at that time. Thank you.
So a proposal to defer, Councillor Round.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rawlings. So can we agree to defer this application and to request further information from the applicant, but with a view of wishing to take it forward at a future date if we can?
Okay, I agree with that too.
Great, thank you. Brilliant. We now move on to the Royal British Legion in Invergordon, who submitted to refurbish the Legion Hall, and they are seeking to modernise the facility, restart the social club, and make the building, I presume, more suitable for the heat hub, food banks and lunch clubs that have been going on and want to go on. So here it's been highlighted that there is no match funding in place, and the project does also not yet address how the project meets local priorities and plans. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Okay. As a Cromarty Firth councillor, my view would be that this is a very worthy project, but further information and thinking through is necessary. So again, I might propose that we defer this and request further information from the applicant and indeed offer them some support if possible to help pull this together.
Well, I agree with that too. We'll help, defer, and then we can request more information and support as well if he's, they need some. Agree with it. Thanks.
Okay. So we will defer that project as well. And then the final item, Invergordon Museum. Councillor Collier, are you recusing yourself? Bill. Oh, okay. So final item we have is Invergordon Museum, seeking to turn the museum into a heat hub. And the project is to install new electrical heating system so that it can open as a heat hub and open the museum on a regular basis. Sorry, am I back?
What is the figure requested?
The figure requested is £23,000.
Suppose it depends how long we need these heat hubs for. And what is the benefit of them in other communities that are maybe doing them at this moment in time. My understanding, although one or two people have had the initiative to try them, that they're not being supported. So I would be concerned if giving 23,000 to an organisation to do something, but it's maybe not what the public at large want.
I think there. Sorry, Councillor Rawlings.
I'd agree with Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I think there's certainly scope for this to be taken forward, but perhaps not as a heat hub. There's no doubt, I think, that the Invergordon Museum would be a good community resource, but the application as it is, I think, lacks some detail about how this new heat system would actually take us to the goal where it is a functioning community space. Mark.
It's maybe just to help guide your thinking on this, and I'll declare a slight interest that anything that relates to buildings obviously has an interest to me. The thing I would advise is in these situations, it's often not just about the capital cost of installing something. It's actually about what revenue monies are they going to have to be able to pay the bills that attach to that and to pay the ongoing repair, maintenance and eventual replacement of. So yes, it would seem to me to be competent for the application to be put forward. But if I was looking to make an investment of that sort in buildings that I'm responsible for, I would be going back to my offices and saying, that's all well and good just buying the item in the first place. What are you going to do about maintaining it over its economic life, which in some cases in some heating systems can be as much as 20 years. You're creating a commitment that I wouldn't want necessarily bouncing back to the council to be asked fill the gaps in if there isn't a resilient plan to make sure that it's actually affordable on an ongoing basis, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That is helpful. So I suggest we're all in agreement that this is a worthy concept, but we would want to defer this for the moment to give them an opportunity to put in a further an application with more detail. Is that agreed?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I believe that concludes item 4, unless I'm missing something else.
I'll just text Councillor Loudon and Councillor Collier, 2 ticks. Sorry, the faster you try and do something, the slower it goes, doesn't it?
Helen, I've already texted Councillor Collier, if that's any help.
Yeah. Oh, good.
She messages me her number, so I've done that.
Yeah.
I haven't done the Derek Loudon though.
He's come back. That'll do. I know what I mean. That's him. His message gone too. And I do actually. I had texted apologies about half an hour ago from Councillor Smith, so if you could maybe add the apologies, Fiona.
Will do, thanks.
Hello.
Hello, Derek. I think we're just waiting for Tamala.
Oh, okay. I nope. Maybe hi Tamala, you're back. It's good. Okay, let's see if I can maneuver my way around my one screen. There we go. Okay, so thanks very much, Molly, for stepping in and chairing, and thanks to Paula for the presentation, which I didn't see, but I'm sure was a good introduction. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Area Roads Capital Programme, and as usual on these occasions, Ian Moncrief is here to present this item. So over to you, Ian, if you want to introduce it.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. This report is for the Area Roads Capital Programme for next year, 23-24 for the Easter Ross area. If we start off with the capital budgets, the capital budget for the whole of Ross and Cromarty is set at £1,081,409. Now, just to maybe clarify something, in my report, I had to include the previous year's budget because our budget for this year isn't set. It's not going to be set until probably about May or maybe even June. So we have to work off the previous year. And the previous year's budget, not only does it show the capital budget, it also shows the proposed budget allocation for the 10 million capital allocation and the health and prosperity budget. But for 23-24, we only have the baseline budget, which should come to just under £1.1 million. Now that's available for the whole of Ross and Cromarty. And as you know, there isn't, that budget hasn't been disaggregated into the individual committee areas. So in order to have some sort of sensible programme, as I've done in the past few years now, I've divided the budget up on a pro rata basis based on the road network length in each area. So Ross and Cromarty has 1,651 kilometres of road, and in total the Easter Ross area has 388 kilometres, giving a percentage of 23% of the entire road network. I used that 23% of the 1.1 million for the total Ross and Cromarty to give an Easter Ross area working budget of £254,534. Councillors will remember that we discussed the schemes at the recent ward business meeting on the 22nd November, and I explained how we like to have additional schemes already approved subject to funding. These are shown below the red line, and schemes that we can fund are shown above the red line. If additional funding is made available, then we simply move on to the next scheme. So the area capital programme for 23-24, we've got overlay or patching works on the Dingwall to Evington back road, the Achnagarran road from the A9 all the way up to Milnafoor road. There's two entries there. The first one, the overlay from the Bend to Milnafoor road junction, that's probably the more expensive option, as we have to overlay that section of road. And I'm sure you're fed up hearing from me, but overlay roughly costs £25 a square metre, whereas surface dressing costs somewhere around about maybe the £3 to £4 a square metre. Once that's overlaid, the worst section's overlaid, you'll see the third entry there. It's to surface dress it, and we're going to surface dress it from the A9 junction all the way up to Milnafoor Road junction, approximately 800 metres. We also want to do work on the B9165, Fern till Balmucky, and again, that's surface dressing. And the U3889 Shore Road in Tain is pretty poor, and that's also going to be needing surface dressing, but that will include substantial patching. Schemes that we'd also like to undertake if we get additional funds include the B9166 Fern to Ballintor to surface dress that, Caplick Road from the quarry to Obstale Junction, which would be an inlay, the C1004 inverted Tain. We would like to continue from the last section we surface dressed and bring that all the way up to into Tain, into the actual town. very quickly, I should have explained that surface stressing seals the road and extends its life, whereas overlay improves the structural strength of the road. So with limited budgets, we need to be extending roads life wherever possible. The Kilry to Arabella section, again, we have some surface stressing there. And on Scotsburn Road from Lamington Quarry, from the West Road through to Tulloch Road Junction, again, surface stressing. However, some sections of road are just too far gone to surface stress them. And the last section of road at St Catherine's Cross at Locheye, it's a short section of overlay. Once again, the schemes below the red line can be funded if we get additional money. Above the red line, the schemes can be funded from our baseline capital that we expect to receive. So in conclusion, we see that for Easter Ross area, we have a budget of £254,000. It includes 5 schemes covering both strategic and local routes. I'd ask members to approve the programme, and I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. That was a good presentation and explaining the different categories of work as well. So basically what we have is the part above the red line can be funded from the baseline capital budget, but the schemes below the red line would require an additional grant in the way that in the previous 2 years there's been an extra capital allocation. You would need a continuation to be able to fund the schemes below the red line. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
It's just to help to clarify what we would our ambition,
yeah,
and what we can deliver.
Yep, that's clear. So thanks for that. There's a number of hands up, and we'll go to the Vice Chair first. Over to you, Molly.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Ian. I just wanted to say, you know, obviously we'd like to fund all these roads. I'm really pleased to see Dingwall to the Eventon back road on there. I know it's a road a lot of people use for commuting, and it has been in very poor condition, but it also takes the pressure off the Eventon junction, which is one that is really tricky to get out onto the A9, particularly in the morning. So I think this is a great move, and people will be very grateful for it. Thanks.
Thanks, Molly. I didn't see who was next, so I'm going to go to Alistair Rind next, if that's Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ian, for your report. And, you know, I think the roads generally have taken a severe hammering in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And there's 1 or 2 points I would like to raise. Firstly, you know, this report, members kind of discuss this at various times, but now I'm wondering, when I see the roads that are mentioned on this report and I see the roads that are severely damaged following what's happened over the last couple of weeks, should officers go out and relook and reassess the situation? Because, for example, there was a wee email spout going yesterday between John Finlayson and Derek about the roads in Skye, for example, and the photographs that came up from them. And Derek was referring back to the roads in Tain down at Chapel Street, where the road just in the last couple of weeks is totally broken up and is in a terrible mess. And then when you take the road at Queen Street, Tain, the bottom of the old health centre road, again, just totally broken up in the last number of days. And one of the problems I was discussing with people yesterday afternoon, is, for example, we'll take the main road in Ballantor, the main street in Ballantor, which got resurfaced a few years ago, a great job done. But the road now is beginning to crack, and you know the water is getting in the centre of the road, because it used to be in the olden days, so the good olden days, that there was liquid tar put to join the roads together and to seal them. But now that doesn't seem to be happening. So the water is getting in the centre of the road, and the road's beginning to break up on both sides. And that's just an example, saying the main street in Ballantor, but in many other areas got resurfaced recently. There's not that liquid tar being used. I noticed that the hydroelectric or Scottish Water, when they come in to do repairs, do use it, but the council don't seem to be using it. So I'd be interested for your comments on that. But I think we're in a very difficult situation because of the low finance that we have. But I think maybe we need to reprioritise due to what's happened in the last couple of weeks and the damage done to various sections of roads. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair.
Okay, Councillor Rind. First of all, in the good old days, we used to what's now called overband when we were tarring, and you would take a bucket of tar, liquid tar, and a brush, and you would coat both the vertical cut face, and then once the tar was laid, you would then put a second coat over the band. But it's been seen that overbanding, it can be a bit of a safety hazard, especially in the wet. And we've not been, it's fallen away from best practice. Oh, must be a good 10 years now. The recent section that we laid, the Easter Ross area, up behind Delney last year, I was on site just to have a look, and I noticed that our guys were actually sealing the edges. We're still permitted to seal the vertical edges of the road, but just not, if you like, overband it. And I can tell you that we are sealing the vertical edges. In terms of priority, I would suggest that we leave the programme as it stands. The reason for that is that we have to get advance noticing in for these works. That notice has already been put in, and we've seen in the past that when we move towards an ad hoc, if you like, programme to patch the roads, it moves away from having a structured approach. We would be pleased to undertake more patching, and we can undertake more patching. After the winter's over, then we'll be able to do more patching, but that will be coming out of our patching budget as opposed to out of the revenue. And finally, I mean, I would say that compared to previous years, the programme is pretty short. I mean, when you look at those 5 schemes, you've got 2 overlay sections and 3 surface resting sections. The surface resting sections, 3 of them would probably only take you the best part of a week and a bit. So it's not going to be the same situations as we've had in the previous summers, where we've all been running around trying to deliver a programme that was, frankly, extremely difficult to resource. So I would recommend the programme as it stands, but I'll note the patching, and if any councillor wants to contact me either through the ward business meeting or separately, then we can attend to that patching as soon as we can. But at present, all our DLO are concentrating on winter. Now, I know the temperatures have just come up, but we don't have the resources to undertake both winter maintenance in the morning and in the evening, and then go and do other duties just now. we are really pushed. So the patching would have to wait until we come to the end of winter, or we get a long-term break from the snow and ice.
Thanks, Ian. Tamala, you had your hand up. Do you still want to comment?
Yeah, most of the questions were raised and answered, like Ian answered already. It's just a quick question, Ian. What is our patching budget like? Do you have?
Yes, I don't have the revenue figure to hand, but there's sufficient money in the patching budget to do a lot of patching.
It's just
maybe if I could explain around my revenue budget in a bit more detail. Although it's split up in terms of patching, drainage, signage, a whole load of other, if you like, client functions, I also have a trading account. The client functions, together with winter and the trading account, they all add up. And my revenue budget is insufficient for my current operations. So I can divert money away from something else to do more patching, but I can't increase the amount of money.
It's a never-ending juggle, isn't it? When it comes to it's just that because within the last 4 weeks, I know that there were loads of damages and insurance claims may have gone into the Highland Council, and there's more potholes starting to come up as well. I understand, I appreciate that we have less workforce as well as budget issues, but it's something to think about for the long term, like how we can do things different. I know it's all come to the money by the end of the day, so it's quite a wee bit of a trouble there. Thanks. Yeah.
We traditionally we wouldn't really undertake any significant pothole patching this early in the winter. If we undertake it too early, then the frost gets it and the patch fails. So anything we sort of do now, it's more of a temporary nature. And as we've already seen, the temporary repairs using coal tar don't really last. Once we get out of winter, that's when we would normally start patching to repair the winter damage. So depending on the end of winter, it might be could be mid-March, or it could be mid-April. But once the temperatures come up and we're out of the frost, then that's when we would seriously attend to the patching.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other member with their hand up. So with this item, the committee is asked to approve the proposed 2023-24 area roads capital programme for the Easter Ross area. Can we agree to that? Can we approve the recommendation? Thanks very much. If I can go back briefly to item 3, the committee was asked to comment on and scrutinise the area performance report from the Fire and Rescue Service. Can we also agree that we've done that? Okay, it's agreed. And thank you, Ian, for attending today. And I think we're all keenly awaiting the budget settlement, and certainly I think all the members here, looking at the state of the roads, would certainly be keen to see you been able to do the things below the line as well as the things above it. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. But thanks very much for your attendance today.
Okay, bye-bye.
Right, if we move on, item 6 is the place-based investment fund update, and that's from Helen Ross. So over to you, Helen.
Yeah, thank you, members. This is just a simple request to reallocate our 3K that we'd set aside for automatic locking system for the toilets in Allness, and put it to the community grant stream. And the reason for that is simply that on reflection, the kind of issues around vandalism at the toilets, which I know lots of areas experience as well, are a bit more complicated. We might need a little bit more work with the community and partners, and just putting the lock on is unlikely to sort it, and in some cases can even aggravate it. So it's still something we're interested in looking on, and we'll be working with members. I'll talk to them at business meetings to see if we can come back with some work to make those toilets sustainable. But in the meantime, to make sure we make use of the money, and we certainly can if we can put it into the community grant stream, because we've had good applications coming through that. So asking members to approve that transfer.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. The committee's asked to agree to the reallocation of the £3,000 of place-based investment fund monies to the community grant stream. Can we agree that?
Yes, we can.
Agreed.
Very much. Okay, item 7, the Invergordon Common Good Fund. And Helen, I think that's back to you.
It is indeed. Thank you, Councillor Loudon. This presents the usual annual accounts for the last financial year, the monitoring report to the end of December, and the budget for 23-4, which members are asked to approve. I won't go through the accounts because I think they're probably be all much as people expect. But the areas perhaps to highlight is in terms of the assets of the common good. The town hall, as you know, as members know, has been marketed. I understand from property colleagues there has been some interest shown, which is interesting. No closing date set on that, and relatively recently we've also had contact from a local group who have indicated their interest in the property, and I've got an expression of interest in. Now obviously they will have quite a lot of work to do before they could put in the full asset transfer request, because obviously they need to look at all the money for refurbishment and sustainability. So it is quite a difficult job, as we know, to do that, but we'll just keep members up to date as those things progress. And I know members are always keen to know the position in relation to the Bouchardon bust. Some work's been happening to start preparing a paper on that, and Sarah Murdoch has done some really good work looking at what might be considered, what has been elsewhere considered either an ethical or an unethical sale, so some information that members will be interested in, but a bit more work is needed yet on the financial side in terms of investments and the benefit that could be obtained, and members will understand that our finance colleagues are kind of busy at the moment, so we won't, we're not able to bring that paper back to members just now, but we'd hope to do that in the autumn of this year. And I think that was all I wanted to highlight in the report, and obviously the main action for the moment is really if members would agree the budget for the next financial year.
Okay, thanks Helen. Molly, you've got your hand up.
Just a question about the accounts. There's a revaluation in there, which I presume it's not clear, but it looks like it comes from potentially the bust. Has that already been revalued, or is that relating to something else?
To be honest, I would rather just check with my finance colleagues, and we could put the answer out after that. I mean, they do. I would rather just double check with my finance colleagues, and if I could put out an email response to that, would that be okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Helen.
The heritage assets obviously are the town hall and the bust, so it will just be a reinvestment, but I don't know if there's additional information that I could provide to members, so I'll follow up after the committee meeting if that's okay.
Okay, Samala, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, it's just a quick question about the bust. No, are we actually set in stone, like we are going to sell it, or is it going to go to the, before we make a decision, does it not go to the community? Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I think my understanding is that's
yeah,
right, but over
to
you, Helen.
Yeah, if I could, I mean, if members wish to consider the sale of the bust, then that would be the trigger point, and there's all the legislation in the Community Empowerment Act would kick in. So the same as we did for the town hall, there's a significant public consultation, and obviously at the end of the day also it would come back to members, and we follow the full process. In that case we would probably need to get a Sheriff Court approval as well. So yes, it would be a really significant statutory process, but obviously it is up to members to decide whether or not to start that exploration and that process.
Thank you, Helen. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much from that. So if there are no other questions, the committee is asked to consider and note the Invergordon Common Good Fund annual report and end of year position for 2021-22. 2. Consider and note the position of the Invergordon Common Good Fund as shown in the 2022-23 Q3 monitoring statement. 3. Agree the proposed budget for 23-24. And 4. Note the current position in relation to the Town Hall and Bouchardon bust. Can we agree that we've done those?
Agreed. Thanks
very much. And item 8 is also Helen, and it's the Tain Common Good Fund.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. So again, this is bringing the annual accounts, Q4 monitoring for last year and the Q3 monitoring for this year for members to scrutinise. And again, we're bringing the budget for next year, for the coming financial year, for approval. A lot of it is the standard report that members are familiar with, but you'll see that the sale proceeds from that piece of land at Blarleith that was identified, that the proceeds of that sale was split 50-50 because part of the land, as members know, part was council, part was common good. So that's why the budget is the income will be higher than the budget because of that one-off payment. And there's been reference in a few reports during last year about the repairs to the Tain Common Good Road, the golf club. Those works have been done, and I've just recently approved the recharge that came through for me in Moncrief. So that 20,000 cost will be shown in the final accounts as expected. Other than that, I don't think there's anything particular to highlight, but I'm happy to answer any questions if I'm able to.
Okay, members have any questions on the Tain Common Good Fund? It's very quiet. There is an item in the minutes, which is the next item, but just in relation to bringing a paper on possible investment of the balances on the Tain Common Good Fund. I don't know if there's been any progress on that, but as you've just pointed out, Helen, finance figures are rather busy at the moment, so that's maybe something we can have a look at later in the year.
Yeah,
okay.
I think now's not the time they're going to concentrate on that, but we're aware the action sits there. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So can we agree the recommendations 1, 2, and 3 that are down there for the Tain Common Good Fund? I'm not seeing any disagreement, so I'll interpret that as agreement then. Okay, that's item 8. Item 9 is the minutes of the meeting of the Easter Ross Area Committee held on the 8th of November, which were approved by the council, and these on the 8th of December. They're circulated for noting. Can we agree to note them? Okay, thanks. And item 10 on the agenda, there is one further item, and that's we're required to set the garage rent rate for the following year. And I see Jake Mitchell is with us, and as is Mark Rogers, the ECO for Property and Housing. I think, Jake, you're going to present the paper, so if you want to do that, that's great.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Before you, as Councillor Loudon has said, is our proposal for garage rental costs for next year. I wasn't planning to go through the body of this report in any great detail today. It simply sets out what our garage position is in terms of numbers and occupancy. And at 6.3, we've provided an illustration of what a 3, 5 or 7% increase would look like. We are recommending a below inflation increase of 7% in rents for next year, with additional income being used to augment the garage repairs budget. I am very aware that members have raised concerns previously about the condition of some of our garage stock, the size of the units, what they're being used for. And I know a commitment has been made to fully appraise our garages and report back to members so we can agree how to progress with some of these units. So work has started in this respect, and I've already had some early discussions with my predecessor Rory on this. And Helen's kindly invited me to your ward business meeting at the end of February, where I'm hoping we can have a bit more discussion around these garages and how we move forward in that respect. So yeah, happy to take any questions on the report before you, members.
Okay, thanks for that, Jake. And I'm not seeing any hands up at the moment, but I've got one or two queries on this. I mean, 7% is quite a chunky increase, and it's a cost of living crisis. So where those garage holders are council tenants, they're often some of the most vulnerable people, and I think we have to bear that in mind. The other issue one that arose, that I'm sure I raised last year, was the extent of the voids. 42% of the garages are void, according to the report, which seems an extraordinary high percentage, and it seemed high last year, and I don't think that number has diminished since last year. So I would question what happened over the course of the last year. If the number of garages that are void isn't falling, what would be the reason for that? And just to make the point, the rent loss from void garages would be almost £84,000 in the year. A 7% rent increase will bring in 13,000. So we've a potential to bring in 84,000 from getting the garages back in use. I just wonder whether that could be more of a focus rather than increasing the rents on the garages that are in use. I think I'll stop at that point.
Thank you, Chair.
One other hand up, and that's the Vice Chair, Molly Nolan.
Thanks. Yeah, I just a similar question about the number of void tenancies there. It's difficult to ask people to pay more when they can point to a row of empty garages and say, but those ones are all sitting empty, and it would be good to understand, are they in a condition that they can be rented out, and if so, what can be done to encourage people to take them up? Thanks.
Okay, Jake, and just before you come in to deal with those, Mark Rogers also has his hand up. So, Mark, over to you.
More of an observation than anything else, Derek. But I mean, I take your point about the cost of living crisis in relation to our own tenants. That's something that we've factored into account very much when we've been looking at the domestic dwelling rents that we are proposing for committee actually this week. I suppose in the context, even at 7% increase, you're talking about a 70 pence a week increase for a tenant from just under £10 to just over 10.5 quid, and even for a non-resident from 11.78 to £12.60. And just in the context of things, and I know this because I'm having to move and put stuff into storage at the moment temporarily, 50 square metres of commercial space will cost you £110 a month. And most of our garages are used principally for storage, largely because they were built so long ago that you can't get a modern car into them. So it's worth bearing that in mind. That said, Councillor Nolan does raise a very valid point, as indeed you did yourself, in relation to the proportion of stock that's currently sitting vacant. And as Jake referred to in his comments, and I think I've talked about this before, either here or in one of my other area committees, part of what we're looking to do across the totality of the housing revenue account stock, so that includes garages and housing stock, is to look at the long-term investment requirements and the viability of retaining or indeed doing other things with some of our assets, and garages are very much included in part of that. One of the options, obviously, for garage spaces that have been long-term void and for which there isn't any particular underlying demand, it would appear, might be to demolish those and actually to redevelop those sites for affordable housing. So there are a range of different options open in there. But I think, you know, the point is well made that irrespective of what we do, and that will take a period of time to do, that it's not really sustainable to have such a large amount of that stock empty. That's a point that Jake may want to comment on, but we'll certainly come back in future committees and have the discussion around that. But I suppose, you know, the challenge is in order to be able to actually do something to fix the condition of some of the stock that's not available to let because it's not in a good condition, we do require to have a revenue stream in for it. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. But I'm not going to steal Jake's thunder. I just wanted to make some general observations from a strategic point of view. So hopefully some of them may or may not be helpful. It wouldn't be the first time people have disagreed with me, but I thought it was worth making those points. Thank you.
It's always worth listening to you, Mark. So over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark, for explaining our rationale behind the 7% recommendation today. So I don't think I need to touch on that any further. Councillor Loudon and Councillor Nolan, you do correctly point out we're carrying far too many voids. And I think Councillor Loudon, you mentioned that picture hasn't really changed from last year. And that will be part of our focus. And when we come toward business, it's looking at whether it's a demand issue or perhaps if it's a condition issue. And we have to make some decisions around potential future investment, whether we want to retain these garages or repurpose them. So those ongoing discussions will happen, and will hopefully address some of your concerns there around the number of voids and that loss of revenue, the void rental loss you touched on, Councillor Loudon.
Okay, members, we are asked to the committee is invited to agree a level of rent increase to apply to Easter Ross garages, and that that level of increase is 7%. So I think I'd ask members if they're happy to agree to the recommendation of a 7% rent increase for garages in Easter Ross. Nobody is indicating they're not in agreement.
I'm not sure that we can agree. Well, I'm not sure I can agree 7%. I think I don't know if there's scope to defer this decision at all. It would be good to understand that. I would prefer to keep it in line with, potentially what happens with council tax or council rents for occupied properties. I just feel like 7% is really difficult for us to wade through.
Do you have an alternative proposal?
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me. My connection's very bad.
Yep.
You can. Well, can I seek advice as to whether we can defer this decision until we have further information about the council budget?
Can I also say I know I've been out of the loop for a long time, but actually the point made about the void garages and the fact that hasn't been followed up from last year either, and it's the same situation this year. I mean, actually, if some or more of those were rented out, or there was just decision was made about them, then you wouldn't have to necessarily put it up by 7%. So I'm slightly with Molly on this one. Sorry, with Councillor Nolan on this one. Actually, I'm not sure that I would agree with that figure.
Okay, I think I'm going to Mark Rogers has his hand up, so we'll perhaps hear from Mark.
Thanks. I suppose, a couple of points. Pick up on Councillor Nolan's point. We do need to set the rents for our HRA properties now. We cannot defer any longer past this point in time, simply because there's a statutory process that we require to follow in relation to setting of rents. So that's, I suppose, the first point. The second point is perhaps a bit more of a philosophical one. I'm not going to steer people towards whichever form of percentage you want, because that would be inappropriate of me. But what I can do is talk about the sources of money that are available for us to invest in these properties. So taking Councillor Rowland's point into view, I think that's a fair observation. I haven't shied away from the fact that these have been problematic for us for a long period of time. But then at the same time, one of the things that make properties unattractive, including garages to let, is the amount of investment that's actually been spent on them. So the more that you actually reduce the revenue that's available to the council to be able to invest in them, the more likely it is that we're going to have at least a challenge in addressing the number of voids we've got, if indeed not increasing. And that is one of the options to it. And just to highlight something which is in the public papers going forwards to committee this Thursday in relation to the rent increase, but our ability to alternatively do something other than put rents up and invest in garages would, if in effect, require us to borrow additional money to invest in terms of capital investment. And it's just worth pointing out to at the present time that the loans charges against the housing revenue account are nearly 42% of the available revenue budget for the whole of the HRA. In other words, I have nearly £27 million worth of accumulated debt. So my ability to borrow against the value of our stock to invest in garages has to be considered alongside all of the other investment decisions we're going to have to take in relation to how much new housing do we build and how much of our existing housing stock do we invest in. And then if there's anything left after that, I might think about borrowing capital to invest in garages. But I have to say to you, I would not be minded to borrow to invest in terms of garages, because quite frankly, I've got enough of a challenge as it is maintaining existing rates of new build and indeed investment in our existing stock to prevent damp and mould, all of which you'll be very well aware of from your own inboxes before I even get to garages. So I suppose what I'm getting to is whatever percentage you choose to set, and that's a matter entirely for your discretion. You've got three different versions in this report, or indeed whatever you wish to put forward. I suppose I'm being very clear about it, that the only additional monies that will flow in to invest in these existing garages is from whatever increase in revenues. I'm not going to propose to put any additional HRA capital into it, simply because of the other priorities I've got. It's really challenging, but I just think it's fair that I give you the opportunity cost of the decisions here to help shape whatever percentage you come up with. And to be clear on that, any percentage that you do choose to come up with will probably, I would imagine, be In fact, it will be legally competent, whatever you come up with. So there's no issue around that. And I get that there's different views about what percent should it be, but I just think you need to understand the context that if you do not put the revenue up from that, it will directly impact on the thing that Councillor Rollins has said. And I'm not proposing to invest any capital money at all, because I don't think that this has sufficient priority in comparison to investing in our existing dwelling stock and indeed in the building of new stock. Thank you, Chair, for that.
Thanks, Mark. That was very clear. So I have two further hands up. I'll come to you first, Molly.
Thanks, Mark. I suppose I'm just wondering, even if we increase by 7%, that brings in about £13,000. I would like to understand what that money could reasonably do to make repairs, because that doesn't sound like an awful lot, particularly given the cost of everything. And will it actually be able to make a difference? Thanks.
And Tamala, you also had your hand up.
Yeah, it's reiterating Molly there as well. And why can't we actually have a lower percentage rather than 7%? Because it's quite sound like a lot of money, but by the end of the day, you don't get much money to do anything productive with that 13,000. So my thoughts about it. Thanks.
I'm happy to come back on that if that helps, Derek.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, you've almost, and that's part of the dichotomy. There's no right or wrong answer here. So in the last two questions from Councillor Nolan and Councillor Colley, you've almost got the opposite position here. So, for example, 7% gets 13,000. You're right, it's not a huge amount. And I'll defer to Jake, who might want to add some comments as to what that additional revenue could usefully be spent on. But then to pick up on Councillor Collier's point of view, which is equally valid, if you choose to have a lower level, then even that rather small amount of money that Councillor Nolan has referred to that would inflow from 7% isn't going to be available, and so there's even less to deal with it. And where does that take us to? It takes us to probably Sarah coming back to me next year and saying, remember what I said to you last year about the fact that the garages are still challenging? And I'll go, yeah, but you only gave me £3,000 extra to spend, or whatever the figure was. And so it becomes challenging in all of those different ways. And actually, it's a really good indication of the fact that there are no necessarily right or wrong answers here. Councillor Nolan and Collier have come up with almost two diametrically opposed views on this, and Sarah has a different view in herself. No doubt you do, Derek, but they're all valid points. It's just that there are opportunity costs that flow from whichever decision you take, and I just want to be sure that you're comfortable with what the scope of those challenges is before you make a difference. I just think it would be helpful maybe to have Jake indicate what he would propose to do with any additional income flowing in, but I think that would do me for my comments on this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Jake, do you want to take that opportunity to comment on how you would spend the money were we to vote to give it to you?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Mark. I wouldn't be in a position to go into detail where we'd spend it now. However, what I will say is that, yeah, will £13,000 solve these void properties that we're holding? Absolutely not. But I suppose, without sounding like Mr. Tesco, every little helps, and I think we can improve our stock as it is now, and that would form part of that discussion at Ward Business, where we focus these funds. And perhaps there are some garages which we can get up to a lettable standard quite quickly. Some quick wins, if you like, and there'll be other garage sites where we have to probably look at sort of more strategic expenditure and investment in them.
Okay. Yeah, I did move the recommendation which we've been given for a 7% rent increase on garages, and that what we're required to do is either to agree that, or for somebody to move a counter recommendation to have an increase at a lower level, or a higher level if you choose to do that. Is anybody intending to move a counter to the 7%?
I would be minded to move 3%.
Do you have a seconder for that? Okay. Councillor Rind. You're on mute, Alistair.
Yeah, just a comment Mr. Rogers made. Is that a competent motion that's come before us now from Molly?
Alistair, yes, it's competent. It's not obviously without its challenges, but it was one of the three options that was put forward in the paper originally. So members, if you have access to that paper open just now, you'll be able to see what the impact is on the amount of money that would be available in that case. So 3%, for example, would take for a tenant £9.82 to £10.11 a week, as opposed to the proposal at 7%, which is £9.82 to £10.51. So there would be a difference of effectively 40 pence a week saved for a council tenant by 7% becoming 3%, as is the new motion that's being put forward. For those that are not tenants, that's 11.78 would be an 82 pence a week increase to £12.60 at 7%, or a 35 pence a week increase to £12.13 a week. Again, very roughly, the difference is about 50 pence a week per garage if you go at 3% as opposed to 7%, and so that hopefully gives you an idea. It would increase annual income at 3% by just under £6,000 a year, about £5,500 a year, as opposed to the £13,000 that a 7% increase would provide. And that's it in summary. But yes, Alistair, it's definitely competent, because it's actually an option that's contained within the report that's put up for your consideration. Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have an amendment from Molly Nolan and Tamala Collier, and I think this will go to a vote. So Fiona, do you take? I think you
take you to a vote. Yeah. Can I just check? So we have a motion from yourself, Chair, to.
I don't have a seconder.
Need a seconder, yeah. Does anybody like to second?
Anybody want to second this? Sarah, you've got your hand up.
You're on mute.
So I'll second it, and the reason I'm going to second it is because most people who have garages won't be having anything different done to those garages, and it might be a very small token gesture, but I don't see, seeing that they will wonder why their garage rent is going up for 7%. Nothing different is happening there, and it sounds, I think, a much gentler option to put it up by 3% to those people who are struggling all around. So I will second this motion.
The one to put it up by 3%.
Yeah.
That's already been seconded by Tamala.
Sorry, I hadn't realised that, Tamala.
What I was looking for was anybody wishing to second the motion in the paper for an increase of 7%.
Apologies, no.
No problem. So there's nobody willing to second a 7% increase. So it wouldn't go to a vote. My understanding would be that the Easter Ross Committee is agreeing to put the charge up by 3% as proposed by Molly Nolan and seconded by Tamala Collier. Fiona, are you happy that I've got that right?
That's exactly what I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay, right. Thanks very much. That was the last item on our agenda today. Have I missed anything during the course of the meeting, Fiona, that you need to bring to my attention now for me to clear up before I declare the meeting closed?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, well, just like to thank members and officers for their attendance at the Easter Ross Area Committee today. And I'll draw the meeting to a close at that point. Thanks very much.